and she talked about families. I don't know if you remember this. She was at MMT in Park City,
Yeah.
and you did a little session up there, and I was just like, wow, like I love her take on life and on families. And she's a psychologist and an entrepreneur and a writer and an aerialist and a mama. And like the list goes on, right? And so for those of you who are watching for the first time, it's like, what is this? What is Family Brand and what is the connection series? So at Family Brand, our mission is to inspire families to really take a stand for their family by creating their family's brand.
Mm.
And we believe that every family can decide what it is they want to be known for. And they can define what they stand for by creating their family's brand. And in doing so, they'll create this intentional culture that not only will benefit their family now, but can really create this foundation that could really bless your family for generations to come. And we just want to see families like plant their flag. Like,
Mhm.
this is who we are. And how Family Brand came to be is I have a methodology called the Campfire Effect. And after taking a lot of entrepreneurs through it and making a difference for them around these very things, my wife and I were like, we should take our family through that process. It was this kind of just funny idea. And then we did it and we were like, wow, that's like really made a difference for us. And it kind of created again this we'd never thought of a family brand. And so that's the whole idea behind the connection series, is to bring on amazing experts and guests like Sherry to really inspire families to just be more connected and create more connection. Sherry, I wasn't even planning on talking about this, but I guess as an entrepreneur, and you've seen this, and you help entrepreneurs do hard things, you help smart people do hard things, which I love on your site. I want to talk more about that. But have you experienced personally, and have you seen as well, like it can actually be easier to be more intentional, like in our business brand and our business culture sometimes than in our own home?
Oh, sure. I mean, how many of us have values for our business or a tagline that's attached on our website? Like, we're really good at like getting very clear about who we are and who we are not when we're thinking about our professional brand or our business brand. But I think with a family, many of us don't go through any kind of an intentional process where we stop and we think, hey, wait, what distinguishes our family, our little tribe, from the house next door or the one down the street, and how do we make sure that we're staying true to that identity?
Okay, so I have to ask this because you're a psychologist. I want to know your take on like why, because I'm the same way. It's like it had never occurred to me until it did, but it's just like, why don't like. And by the way, this is not at all like, I never want a parent to feel guilty or like
Oh
ashamed, or
yeah.
because like we're all doing the best we can. And it just hit me. So yeah, any insights onto maybe why that is?
I mean, I think historically we did, right? Families would
Mm,
have a coat of arms. Families would have a symbol that was the demarcation between their family and other families. Or our family values were really tied into like our religious traditions. And so, as an evangelical family or a Mormon family or, a Catholic family or a Jewish family, like there were certain sort of traditions and patterns and expectations that guided family life that had to do with an allegiance to a larger tribe.
mm.
And as culture has changed and families have become more autonomous, and in some ways traditional religion has shifted and changed, and families might be less likely to attend Sunday school every week, those sort of unifying themes, I think have dissipated some, so that our families are maybe a little bit more lost in terms of clearly defined values
Mm.
than they were in even a generation ago or two generations ago.
Yeah, I think that's really profound. And I guess a thought that comes up for me is like in Family Brand, we have, been doing more research. I've always been fascinated with families and how they worked because of a lot of my story. And you and I share some similarities in our stories with our
Yeah.
siblings and things like that. But diving in has had me do more research, and I'm shocked at like childhood anxiety and depression. Not
Hmm.
even like we're talking like young kids, and the numbers that are on the rise, and then teenage suicide rates that are on the rise, and like
Yeah.
the opioid epidemic in kids. It's like, do you see that there's a correlation between like this very like as we lose sight of like our family and what we stand for and the values that and these things happening? Is there any?
I mean, in some ways, I think with with shifts in culture, we're talking about waves. So in the past, it's possible that the requirement to adhere to a singular identity
Mm,
and say, hey, this is your family, this is how we are in this family, um, was maybe not great for kids, was maybe
yeah.
too heavy-handed. And it's possible that now we're in a little bit of an overcorrective where there's almost like not too much openness, but there's not enough of a unifying theme within a family that a kid sort of knows solidly where their identity lies. And it's almost like sort of too open. So
Mm,
I think these things kind of go in ebb and flow. And I'm never going to be someone that says, find your family brand, find your family values, and like make sure your kids adhere to that. Like that's not great parenting.
yeah,
um,
totally.
but I think having something that feels cohesive that kids can respond to is really, really helpful and important.
I'm really glad you said that, because one of the things that we've strived to portray with family brand is that it's the opposite of that. Is that this isn't meant to like we come up with these really restrictive, rigid rules that actually
Yeah.
like take away space for kids to be who they authentically are. It's more of
Yeah.
like, how do we create these shared values and shared principles that are meant to actually create space and actually have children feel more safe in who they already are, and still be able to have an identity that's like, wow, I'm part of that.
Yeah.
And
And even to having it be somewhat fluid so that children as they grow can really contribute to the building of that identity in very specific, unique ways.
yeah, that's one of the things that's really big is as we start to, we've had families asking us, say, when can we go through this process? And we're building that, we're building the courses. And one of the things we really encourage is that your children have a say in this, like they get
Yeah.
to help shape the family values and the family identity. Okay. So speaking of that, just can you tell us really quick about just your family? And I want to
Yeah.
ask you some questions.
Sure. So I and my husband's name is Rob. We are celebrating our 20th wedding anniversary in about a week.
Congrats.
Yeah, May 6th.
A
And we have,
quarantine anniversary.
yeah, quarantine anniversary. We had this great plan, and now we're probably going to order it from a really nice restaurant. I might put on a dress. Um, woo!
Yeah,
Yeah, we
that's
have
awesome.
three children who are 13, 9, and 9.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So with the family brand, in your family,
Yeah.
what is it? Yeah. What do you guys want to be known for as a
I
family?
have a visual aid. So
I love this.
this is, I don't know if you can even see it in the
Yeah.
screen. So this is old school. I made this several, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago. Actually, around the time that our first son was born. So about 13 years ago. And it has this, this image of the tree, which represents the family. And then embedded into it are 5 words, which might be hard to see in the screen, but they
Oh,
are
cool.
creativity, engagement, stewardship, relationship, and courage. And those, at the time that I made this, were the 5 words that were meaningful to me in terms of the kind of, values or guiding phrases or frameworks, I should say, that
Yeah.
were felt core to me in the type of family that we were cultivating. So
That's
creativity,
amazing.
my husband and I are both entrepreneurs. We both are, people who kind of color outside the lines. Engagement to me means like involvement. We're like people who, roll our sleeves up and jump in there and take action. Stewardship means like taking responsibility for the gifts that we have or the things that we've been given. We want to cultivate those well, protect them well. Relationship means that we are people who are about people, that we value other
Mm,
humans. And courage, of course, means that we take risks and do hard things. So,
I love that.
yeah.
We share a similar, we have a Smiths do hard things, and I want to talk more about that. But how has having that language shaped your culture? Because there's this idea that I've heard some families say, like, oh, the problem is we don't have a culture in our home. And I'm like,
Yeah.
it's not possible to not have a culture. We have a
Yeah.
culture, whether it's by design or
It's
default.
it's on purpose or not.
Yeah. So how is that like, yeah, how has having language helped? Because that's another, so the question is, what do you stand for as a family? Before
Yeah.
if you were to sum all that up, like, what do you want to be known for as a family? Like, if I someday spoke about your family and I could put it in as few words as possible, what would I say that your family's known for?
I think we're people that show up.
Mm, I
So,
love that.
in like a really, really small phrase, we're people that show up.
Have you guys talked about that as a family, that phrase and what
No, we
that means?
haven't. That just came out right now.
Okay, I can't wait to hear what you guys talk
You know,
about
if
that
I
as a
could
family.
like pull all of those bigger themes
Yeah,
together into one phrase, I think that's what it feels like for me.
that's really cool. Like, there's no right or wrong way. I just
Yeah,
hope everyone's
no.
listening to develop your values, your mission, your vision, whatever you call it. But what I heard in that, Sherry, is kind of what, if it was in the family brand context, those would be your values. But then that thing of like, we show up,
Hmm.
that could be like, that's our mission or our vision, or like, that's just sums it all up. We show up. We're
Yeah,
people who show up. I love that. How has all of that shaped your culture, and what would you say is like the kind of culture you're creating in your home and you're committed to creating? Is it a culture of, like, could you finish it with a word or two?
sure. I mean, two quick stories. One is the sort of creativity part of our family means that we make messes. There are portions of our home that are open art spaces. Our whole home is
Mm,
not messy. I will tell you that. There are portions that are beautiful and nice and really well organized, but there's a space in the basement where there are Legos everywhere. There is paint out. Um, all manner of creativity is encouraged. So if someone wants to like staple something to the wall, there is a space where that can happen.
mm,
And I think that's been really important and that's existed since our children were very little. There have always been art spaces in our home which facilitate all manner of like engineering, mess, and beauty, right?
yeah.
So when we decide we are people that value making things, coloring outside the lines, being entrepreneurial, being creative, like it has a
Mm,
physical presence in our family. Um, a different story, which is about all of our values in combination, is 2.5 years ago, we got a phone call, and the phone call said, "Hey, there's a little girl that needs a home. Are you willing to be a resource?" Which is the most bizarre question ever. We had no intention of being foster parents or adoptive parents. Our family was finished as we understood it. But because of our values of being people that show up, of being
mm,
people who are courageous and sort of take risks, we, you know, said, okay, we'll try this. And that
wow.
meant that we, took on a new kid kind of midstream. And our sons, our biological sons, have shown up for that, right? They have walked through the hardness of that. They've shared their stuff. They've listened to hard stories. So in terms of like how powerful those values are, we knew when we got the phone call that we would say yes. We had to do the big discussions and think about how it would work, but we knew we would say yes because those are the kinds of people that we've decided to be, um, which is not
Mm,
not a moral imperative. It's just this like we're okay with mess, and this was
yeah,
a mess, so we're okay
yeah.
with mess. That's what we do.
Man, that's powerful, because what I hear in that is that, one, we're okay with mess. That's what we do. But it's also like, again, we're people who show up.
Mhm.
I love that you actually said that earlier. Like, if you had to sum it up and then you told a story about that, again, you gotta share that with your kids and be like, hey
We're
guys,
recording
we've
this,
always,
right, Chris?
yeah. But I just, and so again, I hope you hear that what we're talking about here is having like this shared language and an identity as a family around who you're committed to being more than what you're committed to doing.
Yeah.
Because like, if it's all like around like, you got to do this or you can't do that, man, that's like actually the exact opposite of what we're trying to create with Family Brand, is this space for people to be, and but also structure. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, hey, make no mistake about it, like, this is who we are and this is what we stand for, and there's room for you in that, whatever that looks like. I love those stories, but I also love that, and that's kind of what we've started experiencing too, Sherry, is that we actually can make decisions consciously sometimes, or even to the point now where it's not even conscious anymore. We're actually making decisions through the filter of our values. And it's like, well, would we do this? Well, we're Smiths and we say this. So it's like, yeah, I
Hmm.
guess we would do that. Or no, we wouldn't do that. Right.
Yeah, I think when you come to your life either as an individual or a family with some kind of framework, it becomes much easier to say yes or no. It becomes
Mm,
much easier to know what fits within the framework and what doesn't fit within the framework.
Yeah. It's like, how can you know, I share this with entrepreneurs all the time in Campfire Effect. How can we know what aligns with your story and your message if we don't know what you stand for?
Exactly. Yeah.
There's no filter for alignment. Okay. Last question
Yeah.
about your family. So what is it like? You've already given us some of this, but if you had to say like a recipe for connection, like it just really works for your family that has you, because there's also things that we can do in families that have us not be connected, and we know what those look like. But what does it
Totally.
look like when you guys are really connected?
We're playing together. Yeah. It means we're constructing, we do these like little Lego competitions where it's like you have 5 minutes, here's a pile of bricks, make something related to the ocean. And so we have games that we've made, mostly my sons have come up with, and we all engage in that together. Or, I posted recently on social media, one of my kids made a coronavirus piñata because we all just wanted to smash the bleep out of the coronavirus
Something.
experience.
Yeah.
And a piñata is a really like socially appropriate, productive way to do that. But he made it, he engineered it, he hung it up, he filled it with candy, and he invited all of us to play in it together. So if I think connecting for us looks like someone in our family has a great scheme and invites everyone in, and we all are all in. So it's a lot of
amazing.
play and creativity.
And we all just got an amazing nugget of wisdom. Go get a piñata and have a
Make a
coronavirus piñata.
with all
Make
of
a
those
piñata.
Amazon boxes that are circulating around your house.
Seriously, make a piñata, coronavirus, and smash it and take your regret. That's amazing. Okay, psychologist, really, accomplished in that field, work with amazing entrepreneurs. Talk to us about at a time like this of uncertainty and what's going on with our kids and like their identity, and yeah, just talk to us about like children's mental health and well-being and family, and
Yeah.
what can we be doing right now?
Yeah, I think a lot of us, it traditionally when things are traumatic or stressful, we kind of underestimate the impact that has on our kids. Because most of us, if we have healthy, functional kids, the kids are just going to keep rolling on in business as usual. But it's easy to miss some of the small tells that kids are struggling. And I think especially with coronavirus and with the widespread quarantine, all of our kids are experiencing some level of loss. Even if they're like, this is awesome, I don't have to go to school anymore. They are missing things, right? They're missing
Yep.
friendship. They're missing the professional affirmative teaching of a professional teacher. They're missing baseball season. They're missing school plays. They're missing all of these things that are, normally the lessons of childhood. So I think one of the things that's been really helpful for me to think about, for me to talk with my kids about, is like some grief work around all the
Mm.
things that have been lost in this story. That doesn't mean that we only dwell in the sad stuff, but it does mean that we create some space to say, hey, I'm really bummed that I just haven't seen my friend for this long, or I'm really getting tired of Zoom meetings. And I'm like, I know, kid, I'm getting tired of Zoom meetings too. But giving our kids language to express hard things and the things that are painful is, I think, important now more than ever.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, how do you do that? Like, I know some of the things, and you and I had a conversation where we do these weekly check-ins with our kids, and we do some one-on-one dates and kid dates, and
Yeah.
try to be really intentional. But one of the things I realized that we had opportunity to do with the coronavirus is we've just implemented this one question of like, hey, how do you feel?
Mm-hmm.
And granted, most of our kids immediately go, good,
But fine.
fine. And it's like, no,
Yeah.
like, how do you really feel? And, one of those opened up a really amazing conversation with our 12-year-old that led to him like sharing that he really feels purposeless lately. And that led to a family workout that's been a difference for him and for us. But like, how do you like, yeah, how do we start to have those kind of conversations with our kids and create space for them to share really what's going on? So we're not just
Yeah.
getting the good, okay, fine.
How do you feel for many kids, depending on how introspective they are or how old they are, is almost too broad of a question.
Mm,
I like questions like, hey, what made you laugh today? Or was there a moment that you were sad today? What made you angry today? So you're assuming a broad range of emotions and you're just asking specifically about when those emotions occurred. That helps, I think, be a little bit more specific for kiddos. Also, there's
Awesome.
some great like feeling charts on the internet, right? Like with the faces, especially for younger children, it can be helpful to even help them cultivate emotional language by using a tool like that where they can say, that face is me. I have that grumpy face right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you find that there's a difference in kids really being willing to open up and visit those feelings and really share what's going on more in like a one-on-one or a two-on-one setting without their siblings around? Or are they just as willing to kind of, will they build off each other and get a little more courageous with each other?
I'm sure it depends on the family and again, the relationships between those siblings, the emotional safety that exists depending on how old the kids are and what gender they are and what's going on right now. I think our family specifically does better as a group of 5. So I think when it's like me with one of the kids, it's almost like, ugh. But when we normalize, because I'm real intense, but when we normalize that we as a family just have these emotional conversations, it becomes again part of the culture of the family rather than a kind of one-to-one. That said, there's a place for all of it. There's a
Yeah,
place for
that's
all of
awesome. Yeah, that's great. And that's one of the things that's really, unique about this is that every family is unique. And like, look, you've got to like, you can take a structure like Family Brand and take all the good from it and still blow, like, you've got to do what aligns most
it.
for your
Yeah.
family. And so on your website, I love the opening line on your website. I help smart people do hard things. And then you talked about that one of the as you unpacked one of your values, it was like, yeah, part of what that means is we do hard things.
Yeah.
Talk about that. Like, why is it important for you to help people do hard things and for your kids to do hard things?
I think I am really drawn to people who want to do hard things. And I think when it relates to my children, like I've hope I hope have created or cultivated kiddos that sort of are pursuing excellence, or they're open to risk, or they want to try things. So for example, my oldest son really wanted to learn to scuba dive. And like,
Mm,
you're 13, like that's kind of like the lower level of age that I would think that would be a wise idea for. So we went through that training with as much rigor as a mother with a PhD can give a kid. Like that kid knows his stuff about scuba diving more than any other diver I know. And because he wanted to do it, but it was hard, it's scary, it's like almost maybe not quite wise. So we made sure that he had extraordinary amounts of support and accountability to be able to do that well. And I have another kid that loves to create music. He plays the violin. He's like a classically trained violinist, but he loves
mm,
to overlay his violin music to techno beats. And we're
awesome.
like, awesome. So there's so much rigor and practice that goes along with being an excellent musician. And so my job as his mom, I don't play the violin, but my job as his mom is to show up for every lesson and make sure that he is absolutely resourced and hold him accountable to his goals and cheer him on, but also, be critical sometimes. So when we think about how to help people like pursue excellence or like pursue the things that they most want, that's what I'm talking about when we talk about help people do hard things. Most of us who've
Mm,
done hard things, we didn't do it by ourselves.
yeah, I love that. So what I hear in that is that when you say do hard things, it's like, look, if there's something that's really meaningful and really important to you, that you have the faith and the courage to go after it, even if it's scary, and recognize it takes a team sometimes to like to do that and to get there. I read an article recently that I loved about resilience. And there's all these thoughts that like, man, kids aren't resilient anymore these days, or kids are more resilient than they've ever been. And like, where do you, as a psychologist, like, where do you see that? Like, do you see that children and families are just as resilient as they've ever been, or has some of that been lost with?
I mean, I think kids are wise. I think kids are being asked to grow up and handle questions that are largely beyond their developmental ability much sooner than they should be.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know how to sort of make a blanket statement about resilience, but I think the kids are doing okay given the amount of crap being thrown at them.
Totally. My wife and I were on a walk through the night. We're just like, yeah, it's almost so like it's like I can't comprehend a time before the internet or cell phone, even though I know I experienced that and growing up.
Yeah.
But to really go back and put yourself in those shoes, to like really insert, like, what would that be like?
Mm-hmm.
I was telling my son that it kind of blew his mind. We're fixing his bike tire. And I just thought to tell him, I was like, hey, do you realize that when I was your age, I grew up in a small town. I would get on my bike Saturday morning and come home like Saturday night.
Yeah.
And he was like, what? How would you get a hold of grandma? And I'm like, I didn't. Like,
Yeah.
they just couldn't fathom like that type of. And so I love this idea. So last thing, I know we're short on time here, is one of the most amazing things I'd ever observed in one of my clients. I walked in this company and they'd brought me in to help them with their story and their message, part of which included mission, vision, values. They had the most amazing culture I'd ever seen of like acceptance and performance and love and really diverse backgrounds of people. They didn't have one stated value.
Hmm.
They didn't have a mission statement. They didn't have a vision statement. And it almost was like confusing to me. And it was the most powerful culture, healthiest culture, most inspiring. Like these people would like step in front of a car for each other.
Yeah.
With no language. And they knew that they could upgrade that. That's why they were. But what I recognized is like, you can have the greatest sayings in the world, but if you don't create space,
Yeah.
where people can be. So we just talk in just the last couple of minutes here about like, look, what is that? Like how important it is to grant children space to be their authentic selves and go after their dreams. And
yeah. My husband and I met on the track team at the University of California. So we're both collegiate athletes. And I would have bet a large amount of money that between the two of us, we would have spent a large part of our parenting energy on the side of a soccer field or a basketball court or something. And we have zero athletic children. Our kids are musicians and, intellectuals. Like they're just not at all who I would have predicted would have arrived on the planet, given the genetic combination of my husband and myself. And there's a moment early on as a parent when you must decide to let go of what you expected and really look at who is in front of you. And when your mission becomes, I am going to love the bleep out of you creature that is unexpected, that's when I think you create the kind of space for the child to really be who they need to be, who they long to be. When you're no longer attached to the outcome, or you're no longer attached to this sense of here's what success looks like for us, but it's more, tell me about what success looks like for you.
That's amazing. What a great way to end. I mean, and it's so hard to do. We don't even realize we're doing it.
Yep.
Like we don't realize how many expectations we actually have that we filter our parenting through, and like, and how much we judge without even really intending to. But like, that's one of the core foundational pieces of the kind of signature course with Family Brand is creating space. Yeah. And we are not teaching it from a place of some perfected body of work. I can tell you that right now. We're teaching it from a place of wanting to just continue, like, can we create more space for ourselves, for each other, for our children? Because inside that space is possibility for anything.
Yeah. And that space originates from our own hearts, right? From our hearts being big enough to love without like deep requirement or expectation. It comes from us having enough space to really like be compassionate towards ourselves.
So true. Well, Sherry, you have been amazing. Yeah. Thank you for your time. Okay. I have one last question, and I didn't prepare you for this one because I love just seeing what comes out.
I'm ready.
If there was one piece of advice you could give families right now that you think would just make a difference for them, what's one piece of advice that you could give families right now?
Oh, just play together. Yeah. Pandemic aside, stress aside, homeschool aside, just play.
Love that. And every family's play can look different.
Oh yeah. Finger painting, Legos, Monopoly, Minecraft.
Pinatas.
It doesn't matter. Yeah. Bashing something to death in your, not to death, a pinata in your driveway.
Yeah. It's amazing. Well, Sherry, thank you for coming on, and like so much. I hope you guys go back and listen to this, and we'll have from this. But yeah, just we believe in families. We believe in the power of family. We want to see families stay connected and be more connected, and just appreciate you guys being on. And Sherry, thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much for inviting me, Chris. My pleasure.